For an inverse tan graph, well, if you restrict the domain just to this section here, it'll give you every value. So in that case, that restricted domain would be negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. We're not including those. These should be parentheses. So on the inverse of that, the range is just going to go from here to here, and the domain is any value you can put in. So there's the sine, cosine, tangent graphs, and their inverses. Okay? And our goal in boot camp is to actually construct them by hand and to figure out how the construction happens. Okay? Does that make sense, you guys? Alright. So we're doing a lot in radians here. And I showed you what a radian was. But how do you convert? If I give you 30 degrees, how would you convert that to radians? Which one? How do you know which one's which? What do you do? Yeah, it's the same as this. If you have 2 feet, how do you convert that to inches? What do you do?
12 inches over 1 foot.
That's illegal. You can't just start multiply my bank account by 1 billion. You can't just multiply numbers. That's illegal.
Convert it using 12 inches over 1 foot.
The only thing you can do to a number to not change it, if I have 2 feet, I want to know how many inches. Well, I can multiply anything by 1. That's what you're talking about with your stoichiometry. Well, I know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So I see where your number is coming now. You know what I'm saying? If you multiply this across, you get 24 foot inches divided by 1 foot. And numbers cancel out just like units do. These cancel out, leaving you with 24 inches. If you flipped it the other way, then you would get 24 feet squared over inch. And that's a big hot mess. Does that make sense, you guys? The same thing is true, exactly what Sonia was talking about, with conversions between radians and degrees. So we saw that 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians. Is there any other conversions? Is there a simpler conversion I can do than that? Yeah, if 360 is 2 pi, then 1 pi is half of that. So pi is 180 degrees. So if I wanted to convert this to radians, I got to cancel those degrees. So what do I need to do? Multiply by 1, and I won't change the number if I multiply by 1. So what goes where? Yeah, you want these degrees to cancel out. So this is, boom, we're multiplying 2 fractions. We multiply across. The degrees are going to cancel out, leaving you with 30 pi over 180. And the degrees are gone. How do you simplify this? If I want to simplify that fraction, what would it equal? What's that? Did anyone get a big hot mess when they put it in your calculator? Leave the pi out of it, because you know it's going to be multiplied by pi. Your calculator wouldn't be able to simplify that. So if you do 30 divided by 180, and then math fraction that, simplify that, you get 1 pi over 6. Does that make sense? If you go the other way, if I give you 3 pi over 4, and I want to know how many degrees that is, what would you multiply by? Yeah, what you want goes on top. So I want degrees, so you better have a degrees in your answer. You multiply across, you get 3 times 180 degrees times pi divided by 4 times pi. These cancel out. You have degrees on top, which is what you want. You multiply that all together, and what do you get? What's 3 pi over 4? 225. Good job. Yeah, 225. Okay? So that's how you convert from one to the other. Any questions on that? let's look at another couple other examples that you may see tonight. Like in number 11, you got something like a function. A lot of it is just like playing around with the functions themselves. What does this do? What does that do? You get something like 1.5 sine of 2x. The amplitude, I asked you for the amplitude and the period. The amplitude is going to be that number that's stuck in front, 1.5. And you can determine the period by taking 2 pi divided by that b value. So the period is going to be 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. Okay, does that make sense? You have a big hot monster like this. Y equals 2 sine 4x plus pi plus 3. This is the only thing that's going to control the amplitude. This thing is going to go up and down lengths of 2 from the center. This is still your b. So 2 pi divided by 4 is going to be your period. And then this value here, does this make sense going from here to here if you factor it out of 4? Would you agree that this is the same as this if you multiplied it back in? This would be 4x plus 4 pi divided by 4 is pi. And this is how you write it if you want to see all those pieces like in that general case. That's your amplitude, that's b, so 2 pi divided by 4 is your period. This is your horizontal shift. So since it's plus pi over 4, you're shifting left pi over 4. Plus 3 is you're shifting the entire graph up 3. So it's going to look something like this. If you want to look at something like 25, you may see something like this. Tan x equals 2.5 on an interval 0 to 2 pi. And you want to solve that. I would graph it. Graph tan x, graph 2.5, and then only show on your viewing window, make sure you're in radian, on your viewing window only show 0 to 2 pi, and then just solve for the intersection point.